Hello, and welcome to the First Brick Property Podcast, episode 18. My name is KM. I'm the director of First Brick Property Buyers Agency. The purpose of the podcast is to bring a casual style show to discuss all things property, with education being the key. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned investor, this show will be able to further your knowledge and really remove any barriers to getting involved in the exciting and fun world of property. Today we have a very familiar guest on. It's his hat-trick appearance. Mr. Fadi Fershi,
Perfect
how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. And a special, obviously, when people are watching this, you actually be seeing us. This is our first recorded episode, so
I don't know why you started with me, but
we're very privileged because you just got a haircut. And we had to have one person clean on the show. Can't have two dirty people.
Yeah.
So we had got Fadi on. How you been? How's life going?
Good, man.
Yeah.
A bit cold at the moment.
It is a bit cold.
Work's going all right.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Been busy?
Busy, new purchases.
Yeah. Picking up.
Market's interesting. Everyone's waiting to see what happens.
That's it. If you saw our post on our page for the early market indicators, refinancing is up another 6% week on week. It's just
the refinance is definitely going up. It's just the delays for the banks at the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's not so much of a priority, but they are definitely getting better.
Yeah.
And the delays are getting a lot more shorter.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. For anyone that hasn't heard our podcast before, maybe missed the episodes that you've been on.
Yeah.
Before we get into today's topic, do you want to just quickly let everyone know what you do for a living? Clearly, he's a mortgage broker, and you work and you have your own business, but just let everyone know.
So anything got to do with lending, we'd love to help anyone out there. Whether it's home loan, investment properties, commercial, business, car loans, equipment, whatever it's got to do. If it's got to do with lending, or if you're looking to borrow money for a purpose, get in contact with us. Visit us at our site, www.powerloans.com.au, all over social media, and we'd love to hear from you. Even if it's just about a discussion or you thinking about any ideas, give us a call. Always up for a chat.
Beautiful. So we'll put your details in the show notes so everyone can find you. So today's discussion is today's topic is a very interesting one. In fact, Fadi, you called me wanting to do this episode, and it was something that I wanted to do a bit later on. But you called me one day, and I heard the passion and the fire in your voice, and you said, "KM, we need to talk about this. We need to teach people. We need to get people to see the other side and see the problems and potential issues with what we're going to talk about today."
I think when I called you, it was just when I got off the phone, basically trying to deal with what I was dealing with, and I'm like, "Nah, let's discuss it." And plus, it's more education as well.
For sure. And obviously, like we always start the show saying the purpose of our show is to educate people, and this topic in particular is very important because not about making money this episode. It's about really making sure you don't make a $100,000, $500,000, $600,000 mistake. And what we're talking about today is off the plan purchasing. So we got Fadi here from a lending perspective and how it works and what the potential issues there, and then I'll talk about the fundamental perspective of like property as a whole. So we'll start at the top. What is an off the plan property? If you haven't heard of the term off the plan before, essentially off the plan means buying. Off the plan is when you sign a contract to buy a property that is yet to be built. So without a physical property to inspect, buyers base their decisions on plans and artistic renderings of how the property might look. So essentially, you're buying a property, or you're buying a contract to say that the property will be built in X amount of years, usually 1 or 2 years, and you're buying a brand new property.
And usually when you're putting that initial deposit down, the matter is it doesn't exist yet. Yeah.
That's right.
So you're investing in something that, there's plans of putting something there. But obviously, as we go on to having this conversation, it might be after 3-4 years. You just don't know.
We'll get into it. But essentially, an off the plan purchase is like you said, just buying the promise of something being built a bit later on. Before we get into why you and I strongly dislike off the plan properties, let's maybe talk about why some people like them or why people look at them as an option and why people want to buy them. And we'll just rattle off a couple ideas just to show that we're not totally biased. But there is obviously people buy them, so there's obviously got to be reasons why people buy them.
I guess, and this is a question for you as well, in regards to off the plan, like we I think we're basically on the same page in regards to the off
Yeah.
the plan, but in regards to land purchases or home and land buildings, the new packages.
Yeah.
Like for example, myself, I was looking into doing that for myself, purchasing land off the plan.
Yeah.
But I was looking at it to make sure it's registered in within a couple of months after that. The subdivision to come through. In regards to off the plan units, which kills me. When clients, and what pains me the most is that we're finding at the moment, just through experience, there's a lot of first home buyers that are attracted to these, off the plan sort of stuff where they only have to put a minimal deposit at the time down. They're given this whole promise that everything's going to be completed. Obviously, there's going to be variances within that. Everyone knows that going into the contract. And at the same time, for me personally, I'm putting a deposit down for something to be completed in 3 years, but that money I'm putting down at the time, I can be utilizing that to build something as well.
That's right.
And at the same time, I'm worried about putting money down on an off-plan land and making sure it gets registered within 3 to 6 months. But how do I know what the property is going to be worth in 3-4 years?
Correct.
And look what's happening now with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Who could have seen that one coming?
Yeah, that's it. So, you jumped the gun a little bit. Went straight into
I told you I was going to get emotional.
You can tell that he's emotional. He's very fired up. So I'll quickly rattle off why some people might find it's a good idea. So I guess the main perceived advantage to buying off the plan is that you agree on a purchase price before the building is completed, and generally only need to put a small deposit. So a lot of people will look at it and think, okay, well, property always goes up theoretically, and if I put a contract price today of $500,000, I only need to put a $5,000 deposit, and I'm going to get a brand new home in 2 years. Fantastic, sign me up. So that's probably the main perceived benefit, and why a lot of first home buyers, especially, but a lot of people get into off the plan properties. The other one is, in theory, again, big capital letters, theory. It means that you can pay a lot less for the property than what it's worth at the time you move in. So as property prices could increase during the time it takes your developer to build a home, theoretically, if we agree on 500,000 today, and in 2 years' time it's worth 700,000, then brilliant. You bought a $500,000 property, but it's really 700.
And that's always the hope.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
And that's why we say big capital letters theory.
Yeah. Well, that was my hope if I was going to go ahead before COVID-19.
That's right.
To do the same thing.
Yeah.
But here's a question before you go on.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate between apartments and purchasing off the plan land, subdivided land?
Yeah, look, so house and land packages are a bit different in that that it's segmented, it's in stages. So when you're looking at a house and land package, which we're not really for either, but it's slightly better than off the plan, because off the plan it's just you pay your small deposit today. When the building is done 2 years later, you settle on everything. House and land is you buy the land essentially, so you at least own the land, which is appreciating. And then you pay the house once it's built and it's segmented
during that construction period.
Yeah. With the off the plan, you don't own anything.
Nothing.
Until it's done.
Like we said, that it basically doesn't exist. But what you said there was a really good point, and that's why I'm not so much a fan of the off the plan, off the land. But you said you own land.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, if you're not looking to construct, you can sell that land later on. You've got those options.
You have
there.
some more options.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So there is a difference between off the plan and house and land. We still don't, and we'll go through why in a sec, but we still don't recommend them. But house and land is slightly better than the off the plans. And probably the final reason, before we move on to the negatives, probably the final reason why people look at off the plan is stamp duty discounts usually. So buying off the plan means you could save a lot of money on stamp duty, as most states offer greater discounts on newly constructed properties. And if a buyer signs a contract before construction begins, stamp duty will only apply to the land value and not the finished product.
Yeah.
So, you're getting a brand new home. Buyers have more time to get their finances ready, in theory, as you will generally only need to put a 10% deposit or whatnot, something small to secure the contract.
And I think that for me, that's one of the biggest advantages. I can see the attraction to off the plan.
Yeah.
Given that you've got some sort of savings, and you find a lot of people that are very eager and very proactive, which is awesome. And they want to utilize that money at the time, and they believe they can have a certain amount of money, and they probably wouldn't by the time the construction's completed or the off the plan unit's completed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what would attract me the most. And I can understand the temptation in regards to
for sure
putting that money down.
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, if someone came up and said to me, "Look, $5,000, and you'll have a brand new home in 2 years, then pay it later."
Yeah.
Why not? Right?
Sounds good.
We'll talk about the negatives now,
Yeah,
and we'll tell you why not. And it is very easy to get pushed into these kind of purchases by spruikers or developers or just salespeople.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, people that are advising these are not property advisors. Property buyers agents usually don't do this. If they do, there could be a kickback coming from the developer, maybe not.
Yeah.
It does depend on the situation. Sometimes it is a decent option,
Yep.
but for the majority of the time, it's not. And we'll go through why not. I guess now the bulk of the show is so you don't make these mistakes.
Yeah.
And you're going to see Fadi
I
get
think
a
it's
bit
more
heated.
of, like, I'd love to just like like a lot of education. There's a few questions I want to ask you as
Yeah,
well.
for sure.
But basically, just to think about not just that moment, around that moment, think about the the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Like the long plan.
Yeah.
Because we're finding now with customers that obviously, like we just discussed, it's a great opportunity at the time, but we're kind of stuck or looking at options now. Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, I'll start it off and then jump in whenever you feel like. The most likely, I think the first point we can look at as a negative is you're immediately overpaying. And you might be thinking, oh, well, you just said you only have to pay $5,000 or whatever. But when we're saying you're immediately overpaying for the actual property, because you're paying for the new shiny stainless steel,
Yeah.
you're paying for the new kitchen appliances, the new bathroom, the new kitchen, the new paint. You're paying for all the brand new stuff. Then you're paying for the property,
Yeah.
the land, and you got to pay the guy who built it.
Yeah.
So you're paying the developer's costs on top. So you're not really paying a true market value.
Yeah.
So whatever the value is, you still got to pay the guy to build it. Whereas if you're the second purchaser of the home or the third purchaser or fourth purchaser, those costs have already been paid for.
Yeah.
And you're paying more of a fair value. So just on a pure fundamental property basis,
Yeah.
you're overpaying
Yeah.
straight out of the gate because you're paying for the shiny stuff and the bling bling factor, right?
Yeah, basically for the brand new home.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's probably the first point. Not so much to do with the lending side or anything, but my second point definitely to do with the lending, and I'll get you to jump in. But the loan process and the banking process, just imagine people who are settling now, and they signed the contract 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of COVID global pandemic. 2 years ago, 6 months ago, no one could think about it, let alone 2 years ago, what this is going to be happening. Do you want to, properties coming in undervalued compared to contract prices? Do you want to jump?
Yeah, definitely.
Go crazy.
Go crazy.
Tell us what you think from the banking and the loans perspective.
I'll go back to your point as well in regards to your overpaying for everything. That brings up a good point, especially in my experience in regards to the home and land packages.
Yeah.
Where I found myself when I started looking into it, where I directly went to the the realestate.com.au where they advertise the home and land package put together.
Yeah.
And then through customers as well, when they went through that sort of avenue, the valuations used to come back short most of the time, especially on the land. And that's basically because you're going for the home and land package together. So basically the developer and the salespeople are making a cut on each one.
Yeah.
What I learned, and from just a bit of education, is purchasing the land first initially, and then looking at the construction costs later on, because you've got an option of how many builders you want to use. But purchasing the land on its own and getting that true value may also be very helpful advice that I found helpful, and I found that as well.
Yeah.
So that was a very good point. But in regards to lending, this is what kills me.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
Look directly into the camera now.
It's unfortunate, especially with units. It's a bit harder because I was having a discussion with you the other day.
Yeah.
In regards to the contracts, it's really written in the developer's favor, basically.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that is the case. And now, if you were to buy an apartment, let's say in 2017, and now we're in 2020, mid-year, it's hard to think it's going to keep its true value after 3 years, especially with a lot of development going around in the area, other apartments that are getting built now. Some of them might be going cheaper than what you actually purchased it for 3 years ago, prior to what it is today.
Yeah.
Not so much just for the COVID-19. It's just that there's so many units going up today. Yeah. There's so much competition, more sales. So you're finding where customers actually purchase the property thinking, like you were saying previously, it will go up in the market, hoping it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But now there's so much demand, the unit space, like the medium density space,
Yeah.
basically, where it's kind of taken a hit.
Yeah.
And now we're finding where customers are not able to get that valuation of how much they purchased it for, and they're finding themselves, unfortunately, funding it more.
Mm.
And then the question always comes up: can you pull out, lose the 5%? And it goes back to what we were saying before. In that contract, in most cases, it's in developer's favor.
Yeah.
And there are scenarios where you can pull out, but if that developer actually doesn't sell that property for how much he initially sold it to you, they've got the option of coming after you.
Yeah, the contracts are quite complex.
Yeah.
And like you said, very written in favor of the developer always getting their money.
Yeah.
And not losing out. Just before we move on, what do you find from your experiences when it comes undervalued?
Yeah.
And so when we're saying undervalued, what we mean is if I've purchased an off the plan and I signed a contract 2 years ago to buy the house at 500,000, the bank doesn't give me the finance until it's ready to settle.
Yeah.
So the building gets built, whatever, it's 2 years later, it's the year 2020. My building has been built, and I go to the bank. Okay, it's ready. Time for financing. Time to give me the money. And they value the property as they do with a normal purchase, whether it's off the plan or not. They value the property and they say, oh, it's only actually worth 450,000. In that situation, what happens? What's the normal procedure? The purchaser has to find extra money.
Those funds, basically. Yeah. So, for example, let's say you purchased it, and this is what kills me. So, people purchase it, and the salesman make it sound so nice and sweet that it's going to be worth this amount of money in this period of time.
Yeah.
Now the banks can't even do a valuation on the day that you're signing that contract 3 years prior and tell you how much it's going to be worth. No one can. So you're really going off what the area is going to look like in a couple of years. And that once again is why you bring a property agent into the story, because they do that research for you in regards to growth in the area, forecasting, whatever it may be. And that's the importance of it. Now, let's say, just put a few numbers out there, you purchased an apartment for 500,000 in 2017.
Yeah.
You come back 3 years later and I go back to the bank and say, okay, this applicant now is ready to settle.
Yep.
We need valuation to be done as per usual. And that comes back at 450. So it's come back at a $50,000 shortfall, basically.
Below contract price.
Below contract price. What I do, first of all, is start doing a few more other valuations to see if we can get closer to try and save the customer that $50,000.
Yeah.
But let's say 450 is the highest that we could get. The customer's going to have to fund that extra $50,000 because the bank's only going to say, listen, we're still more than happy to give you the loan.
Yeah.
But we only valued at 450. Yeah. And we're going to have to go 5% off that 450 or the 10% or whatever deposit you're looking at. So the customers are already out by $50,000.
Yeah.
From a contract that he signed off 3 years ago, hoping they will go up in the market, staying at price or at least contract price. You'd want it to be at least worth the same that you purchased it for.
Yeah.
And that's where it's hurting us the most. And it's very stressful, obviously on the applicants that have purchased it.
Yeah. All of a sudden you've got to find another 50,000.
All of a sudden we're in a position where I don't want my customer to be in that position.
Yeah.
We want to get them, obviously get it at contract price so they're not out $50,000.
Yeah.
And that's where customers start. It's hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I gave you that call.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, we've got to discuss this because if I was 21 or I was 22 and I was eager and proactive, as I'll be honest, like this generation they're coming through, they're really eager to do. And it's great to see that as well. They're very proactive. They want to go out there. They want to start investing. They're not like us or like me being conservative, trying to put my money in the bank and not you. Like these guys are out there, they're hungry.
Yeah.
And just to educate, first home buyer to go out there, these are things to think about.
Yeah.
And if you're really, really eager sometimes it's not so much about investment. Sometimes they just want to live there. And that's fair enough. I understand that. But at least go see someone about it. Don't take the salesman's word for it. And that's where, like I said, it comes back to going to a property agent. Yeah. Because they'll tell you the risk, how much you may be looking at losing, how much you might be gaining, the market forecasting, like you said. Yeah. Get that advice before you put pen to paper, basically. Yeah,
for sure. And a lot of the time, in that situation where there's a 50,000 shortfall, whatever, like the one that we're talking about now, and even that customer when you called me, it might actually be worth it to lose a deposit in that situation because what they're buying and what they're going to have to fork out is not worth it, and it's better off copying a loss, learning from the mistake and moving on.
It'll be an expensive mistake, but at least it's not a mistake that you're just basically digging the hole a
Yeah,
bit
you
deeper.
just that's right. You're forcing yourself into a bigger situation,
Exactly.
yeah. And I think a good point that you sort of touched on was a lot of the people that are looking after plan, they're
Yeah.
young couples, whatever it is, first home buyers, 21, 22, they don't know what happens in the next 3 years. And I'm not talking about on a global pandemic scale. I'm talking about a personal career changes could happen. They buy a couple cars, they go on a holiday. You're
Yeah.
young, you want to enjoy your time. And
I can tell
then,
you from experience, life changes a lot in
yeah,
3 years.
that's
Yeah.
right. And then 3 years later,
Yeah.
someone's telling you very, very quickly, you need to find 50 grand in the next month or two.
Yeah.
It's a hard situation. Otherwise, you lose your deposit, you lose everything that you've been planning for the last 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in that last 3 years, the opportunity to have purchased better properties, is come and gone because you've made a commitment for 3 years' time where
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
don't know what's going to happen. So it's a very good point. I'll tell you this stat. I don't know if you know this stat.
Yeah.
But this stat alone, just we can close the show after this if we want. But this stat alone is probably, it's mind-boggling.
And what is it in regards to?
In regards to the valuations.
Okay, yeah, I want to hear this.
So this is from 2019, so the data's slightly different, but 60% of off the plan in Sydney, 53% in Melbourne were valued lower than their contract price at the time of settlement.
And what's the average time
60%
between?
couple years. It's over 2 year standard
I
build.
didn't know that.
In Queensland, it's 44% are worth less at settlement than what they are purchased for, and in WA, it's 23%. WA, there's not a huge amount of off the plan, so the data's not big. But
Not yet.
Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney 60%, over 60%, and Melbourne over 53%. That is ridiculously high. You're essentially saying there is a 6 in 10 chance
Yeah.
that my property will not be valued at what we're saying it's going to be at today, and I'm going to have to pay more money in 2 years' time.
So there's a 60% chance you're putting money into something that's gonna.
Yeah,
That kills me.
it doesn't make sense at all.
That kills me.
And this stat, that's why I said this stat alone, and those numbers are from last year, so it's probably gone up a little bit. That stat alone should be reason enough for you to really, really consider if off the plan is for you.
Yeah.
If not just completely wiping it off the table.
And
like we've got so many more reasons to go through, but that one alone, it mind boggles me that over 60%.
Yeah. That's what's killing me right now. That's over 60%. And again, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but this is what I was talking to you about. With that stat right there, man, there has to be some sort of moral ground in regards to when it comes after that 3 years, there has to be some sort of arrangement or some sort of discussion in regards to bringing those valuations down or bringing that purchase price, because obviously that unit is no longer that value. So now we're asking people that have signed off, and man, let's be honest, people that have bought off the plan through salesmen 3 years have taken not so much their word, but goodwill basically. Yeah. There has to be some sort of negotiation in regards to bringing that to what the valuations were to be on that day, just to help the customer out and at the same time help the developer out as well.
Yeah.
Because the developers, don't get me wrong, once this stuff goes wrong, 60% is mind-blowing. So you're going to have a lot of developers dealing with a lot of applicants that can't get that loan.
Yeah.
So it would actually help them as well, because we work with a lot of developers where, like, yeah, we are struggling at the moment because they're not getting valued at what we actually sold them for. So that would actually help them as well in the long run, sorry.
Yeah.
But 60%...
Yeah, in Sydney alone.
That hurts, knowing that people might be in that situation.
There is a greater... that literally means in Sydney and Melbourne, if you're buying an off-the-plan property, there is a greater chance than not that it's not going to be worth what the contract says it will. And when you're spending over $500,000 and way more in most cases, that's really a risk you shouldn't take. I mean, if you can link it to anything. You go to Coles and you want to buy a bottle of water, then there's a Mount Franklin, and then there's Pump, and Pump is a lot more expensive. You think, it makes no sense. It's not worth it. You're talking about $2 there.
Yeah.
And we're now talking on a grand scheme of
this is your biggest investment.
$500,000 plus. Yeah. And in most cases, this property is your biggest investment, your biggest asset. And if you're living in it as well, I mean, you're just going to be paying over the top principal and interest on a property that doesn't stack up. So That's a crazy stat, and if you stop listening now, you wouldn't have missed much because really that's enough for you to stay away.
No, we can pretty much end it now.
Yeah, we could, but we're not because we got a few more things that I want to rant about as well. The next point, and you sort of touched on it already, is, and this is more towards about the fundamentals of property. Off the plan properties have no scarcity. And we've spoken about scarcity a million times on our podcast, and supply and demand.
Yeah.
Economics is all about supply and demand, and scarcity is a huge part of supply and demand. To have off the plan properties, you obviously need land and space to build. The closer into the city, the less land. So you find that these off the plan properties are being built way out, far away, new estates, they're not building one or two off the plan properties, they're building an entire suburb, brand new suburb. And when you have a brand new suburb and you have 50, 60, 100 different properties that you can choose from, there is no scarcity. So if I walk into property number one and I think, oh yeah, this is a nice one, I don't know if this is my dream one, no worries, move into the next one, go to number two, go to number three, until I've got 100 options.
Yeah.
And when I finally find the one I like, I can start negotiating. And if I don't want to buy for, and I'm talking about resale value.
Yeah.
When I'm looking, if I'm selling my place and you came to me and you're looking at my place, Fadi, and I say I want 500, you think, the place next door is the same and you're selling it for 490. Yeah, yours is 3 meters bigger, but it's 10 grand difference. I'll go to the guy next door for 490. If then I really need to sell it because for whatever reason I'm in huge debt, 480, 470.
Yeah.
And because there's no scarcity, they're all the same.
Yeah.
What's there? There's nothing there to push property prices up.
Exactly.
So in the long term, not only are you firstly getting undervalued immediately, you're also very unlikely to gain huge amounts of value in the short term, if even medium to long term.
Yeah.
So the scarcity factor is another big reason why you should avoid off the plan properties.
It's hard to think that people can get off the plan. I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Over 3 years, I would not be able to sleep.
It's crazy. Like at First Brief Property Buyers, because we work together with clients. All our clients individually assessed. Every person has their own personalized strategy. We look at their own situation, what their goals are, what their finances are, and whatever. And for me to be able, I have to sleep at night as well, and I have to know that I've done the best job to be able to get this person's money the best value.
Yeah.
I'm spending 500, 600, 700,000 of someone else's money. We need to be doing a good job.
Exactly.
And for me to think about off the plans, and just literally selling like a flyer.
Yeah.
Giving someone which one do you want
this
on
is
the,
what
on
you
the
may
flyer,
get
on your menu. You go to Macca's, there's a menu.
You get this,
which one do you want? Tick what you want. And it's crazy. There's no thought process. It's just a big production line, and you're just getting run off the mill stuff. So the next point is land to asset ratio. We spoke about it, I think last week I was on our podcast, that land depreciates, building depreciate.
Yeah.
So with off the plan properties, your land to asset ratio is usually very skewed in terms of the building bringing most of the value, because you're buying a brand new building, you're buying the flashy new stuff, and not so much value in the land. So looking forward 10, 20 years, your forward forecasting, your capital growth isn't there.
Yeah.
Essentially. You spoke about oversupply, and in a short time frame, because like we said, they're looking at building a new suburb, a new estate, new restaurants, new cafes, new everything nice in theory. That doesn't happen over a short period of time. So what you do get is a huge oversupply. And the oversupply essentially is the reason for the first 3 points we've spoken about today.
Exactly.
The overpricing, the banking issues, the undervaluing, and the scarcity value. You got an oversupply and you have no demand. Only one thing can happen.
Yeah.
Down.
down. And that's another thing as well. What I wanted to bring up is, because you find a lot of customers like, well, why can't the banks just value it at what we purchased it for?
Yeah.
And they'll be, it sounds good in theory, but what customers need to basically understand is, or how the banks basically look at it is, the banks are looked at. Let's say a customer defaults on his loan. The banks will go back onto that loan, start looking at why this customer defaulted on his loan.
Yeah.
So if they go back and say, well, why do we value this apartment at the time, let's say at the 500 when it really was worth 450, the banks are actually, not the developer, the banks are actually held liable for that.
Yep.
Because they put it through. So when they say, how come the assessor did the valuer valued at this much? I'm like, the valuer's got a job too. He has to look at the comparable prices in the area.
Yep.
Going back to what we were saying before. So you purchased an apartment 3 years ago. Other apartments have been put up before then, and they were sold at a cheaper price.
Yeah.
Or something similar to that price. So your apartment is basically being compared to those apartments around the corner or on the same street. And that's why I understand why the valuer is actually valued at that portion. Obviously, I want them to just value at the portion where the customer saves money.
Yeah, of course.
But that's how, just for customers to understand and for people to educate a little bit more, that's how they look at it.
Yeah.
They're not saying, oh, he bought it for that, we're going to...
Yeah. The bank has to guarantee that they're going to get their money, right? They're not going to give you...
And they're regulated as well.
That's right. So they're going to look at it and they're just going to... Then they don't really care too much about the contract. They're going to go look at it and say, well, this is what it's worth. Based off, like you said, comparative market analysis.
Yeah.
What's the market paying for these properties?
Yeah.
And the market is 99% of the time not paying what you want them to be paying.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so, or 60% to be more accurate. I think the next thing is the investors to owner occupier split. We speak about it a lot that when we're looking into areas, we really want to have a 70% owner occupier to 30% renters split. With the OFTA plan, you do get a lot more investors, first-time investors, new investors who are unsure and I think it's a nice, easy option for them. And you really throw that out of whack. So not only are you getting an oversupply, and not only are you getting no scarcity, you have a lot of investors in one spot. And we all know investors don't buy with emotion; they buy with their calculators.
Whatever it may be.
So if everyone in the area has got a calculator out, and no one is like dying to live there, no one has a desire to live. It's not. There's no scarcity. You're like, I want to live near Bondi or Cronulla or near the water, right?
Yeah.
These off the plan areas, these new estates, there's nothing really pushing me there. Oh, new school, I can go into a different catchment area. There's no emotion there.
Yeah.
Especially when a lot of them are investors. So again, forward thinking, nothing there to push the prices up. So that's our sixth reason why you wouldn't touch it. The seventh one, and I think this might trigger Fadi here, is contracts.
Yeah.
The contracts are so in favor of the developer. And I'm just going to rattle off some things. I don't know if you know about them or not. But things like the developers can change fittings and features without notifying the buyer.
So that's the variance.
That's inside the contract.
So that's part of the variances, up to that 10% variance. Whatever the developer puts down, usually it's up to that 10% variance. That kills me.
Imagine, like you're buying your first home.
Yeah.
And you think you're getting what the architect or the rendering looks like, and then you come in and it's not even, the lights aren't dropping down. You spotlights instead of a chandelier.
Yeah.
It's not white, it's black.
It's not what you expected, basically. Yeah.
Something different, because in the contract, the developer can change what he wants without telling you. Now, the next thing in the contract that I need to talk about, and this is crazy, is the sunset clause. So the sunset clause initially is actually supposed to be there to protect the buyer.
Yeah.
But this is what happens, right? So a sunset clause is a statement in the contract of sale that effectively puts a time limit on the contract's validity. So should the developer fail to complete their project by the date outlined in the sunset clause, the contract is declared null and void and the deposit returned to the buyer. Sounds like a pretty good thing.
It's not.
What happens is the clause is meant to protect the buyer from excessive delays, but recently, and we've seen it a lot, some developers have purposely run over the time limit outlined in the sunset clause so they can terminate the contract and attempt to resell the apartment for a higher price. Yeah. So in the off chance that the price of the property is actually gone higher than the contract, so we're saying most of the time they come undervalued and sometimes they outvalue. And the small chance that it becomes overvalued, some of these developers, and not all developers, some developers are looking to exploit the sunset clause by just delaying it, going over your contract. You get your little money back, and then they sell that at an even bigger profit.
Which is basically a win-win for the developer.
It's a win-win for the developer. Like, simply put, it's just another reason to interrogate the developer's reputation and past history before you even think about going ahead.
Yeah.
Like, it is crazy how these contracts and clauses, and I know you're going through it with a customer and you guys have lawyers involved.
Yeah.
It gets messy.
It's unnecessary. I find it so unnecessary. And going back to lawyers or solicitors or a conveyancer, no matter what you're buying, a house, an investment, commercial property, whatever it may be, having a conveyancer, a very good one, is a must.
Yeah.
Because you can tell with people that are purchasing, like for me, when I went to purchase off the plan land, I had no idea. I was purchasing first time, and the conveyancer's like, no, this is not right, this is not right, I wouldn't go ahead with it.
Yeah.
In regards to the sunset clauses, like let's say, for example, for home and land packages, average, they give you up to 18 months for the land to be subdivided.
Yeah.
Some of them are up to 36 months.
Jeez. It's a long time.
That's a year and a half.
It's a long time. It's crazy. These contracts, they're very suited to developers. They're very complex. It's not straightforward like most contracts, like when you're purchasing a property. So definitely have someone look into them, and some of these clauses really can come back to bite you. Probably my eighth reason is that developers might and do frequently go bankrupt. And usually because they're building not just your place, but another 10, 15, 20 places at the same time. So the costs are quite high. So buyers need to do their due diligence on the developer before they sign a contract, as they face the biggest risk they face is when buying off the plan is losing their deposit. Because if the developer goes into administration during construction, you lose your deposit.
Yeah.
You don't, it's not a refundable deposit in that situation. And it happens a lot more often than you would think it happens, that these developers go bankrupt because they're taking a little deposit from everyone.
Yeah.
To build one.
And hoping those that they've completed and sold in time for the next project.
That's it. So there's a lot of hoping going on, and to be honest, you don't want to be hoping when you're spending that much money. My last reason for this, you might have more, but my last reason is you're committing to something that you have no control over for the next 2 to 3 years. When we're purchasing properties for clients and we're looking now, yes, we don't know, because you might be saying, someone might be listening and be like, yeah, well, you can't forecast the next 3-4 years. Correct. We can't, accurately give you an exact figure of how much your property is going to be worth in 3 or 4 years when we buy it. But we have a lot of data, like a ton of data that we use to make our decisions for our clients. We're looking at over 250 suburbs per state.
Yeah.
And then over 25 metric points per suburb to find the perfect suburb for the client's individual needs for their goals. And then we find it, and then we can do some forward forecasting based off previous data over the last 10, 15 years of how the property is performed. So we can have a, very educated idea of where that property is going to be in 10 years, in 15 years. With the off-the-plan properties, there is no data. There is no history. There is nothing. You are taking all the risk on your shoulders.
There's nothing. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. There is no data.
Yeah.
Even the suburb, a lot of the times, didn't exist.
Yeah.
So all the risk, literally 100% of the risk, is on you purchasing this property first. And it's a lot of risk. The other thing is, when you've done your commitment 2 or 3 years time, you can't do anything in that time because you don't know. It comes under value. You need money all of a sudden. You're not sure.
That's what I'm saying. For the next couple of years, you're looking to save up as much money as you can, just in case it does come under value.
Yeah.
You might find something else that you'd like, but unfortunately, you've already tied yourself down to another investment.
Yep.
And you're not able at the time to take the opportunity that you want at that time as well.
Yeah. In that 3 years, opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're missing out on opportunities that have just come up, and you're unable to go for them as well.
Yeah. That opportunity cost, I think I need to make a formula and work it out, because opportunity cost, I want to put a dollar figure to it. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like the amount of properties that will come and go in those 3 years' time that are 100% better suited to your needs than purchasing that off the plan now and waiting 3 years. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And even if you bought something today, for example, in that 3 years, you can value add, you can renovate, you can, paint, you can do so much. You can grow your own equity, you can grow your own wealth. Whereas when you're doing off the plan, you're literally sitting there and waiting and hoping, and you've taken a lot of risk for most of the time, either little, if not no reward at all. So,
and at the time, don't forget, they may want to be, whoever it may be buying it, may want to move into the apartment there and there, but maybe later on, a couple of years, they want a house.
That's right.
They find their house for the same price what they bought their apartment for.
They have a child. They have a bigger
child.
space.
Yeah, they found the love of their life. They
get divorced.
Yeah,
whatever
it may be. But it's. I tell you what, look, if a customer comes to me now in regards to an off plan, I definitely suggest them to go get a bit of a understanding of what they're about to sign off on.
Yeah,
good conveyancer, property agent. Because man, it's for me. It kills me trying to help people out, but I'm in a position where I can't.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying my very best to try and save them as much money as possible. But it's so stressful on the customers, especially when they really just want to move in and start their lives, or just, it's been for years, they just want to go in without the headache of losing money. They want to start it's difficult.
That's right. And a lot of the time, you'll find the people selling off the plan properties, you find them in shopping centers.
Yeah.
You find them, in restaurant areas, cafe areas.
That's where we need to start going.
I know, we need to start being there. But if you've gone into, like I just explained very quickly our process.
Yeah.
We start with a strategy call, 45 minutes to an hour minimum. Sometimes we go 2-3 hours, depending on the person. Strategy call to develop a strategy. And we don't start this until they have a pre-approval. Because without knowing the person's borrowing power, we can't decide what your strategy is.
Correct.
Right? So they go to you first, then they come to us. Strategy call. Then we research 250 plus suburbs per state. Then we narrow it down to 50.
Yeah.
Then we narrow it down to 10. Then we narrow it down to 5. Once we're down to 5, we add another 25 metric points that we look into. We narrow it down to 1. Then we go through the streets in the suburb.
Yeah.
Then we go through the streets, and then once we've done the streets, then we go look at the suburb, at the property. Now, we do all this just to make sure we do it right for one person.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said was we can't start unless they have a pre-approval, if they've gone to the broker. You walk into a shopping center and the person telling you, he doesn't know you from a bar of soap. He's saying, this is the property for you, off the plan, it's going to be great. It's the best thing for your situation. He doesn't even know how much money you have.
Yeah.
Right? If the off the plan
does it really matter? Because if they can't afford it today, you can afford it in 3 years.
That's true. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But maybe you can afford 10 times it. And
exactly.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Look, don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. Don't make a huge financial commitment, which is, I'm going to go out and say, is going to become a mistake.
Yeah.
Happy to put that out there. And if anyone wants to call me, challenge me, talk to me about it, my details are available. We can call, we can chat. And really, this is just to help. Like, I know a lot of developers, I know a lot of builders, and a lot of these, they're very good people.
Absolutely.
And they work very hard. We're not targeting those people at all. Just the idea of the plan and how it works, most of the time it doesn't work out.
You'd love for it to work out every single time.
It'd be an easy choice.
Easy, and not a lot of people losing money. But the reason why I got fired up, I felt helpless.
Yeah.
I felt like I really want to help these people out. I don't want these young kids that are 23, 24 to be forking out this amount of money over what they've already poured in. It's just upsetting because you want to, in my sort of industry, you want to be helping people save money.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So when you're trying your best to get to that stage and you feel helpless, it's like it's hard, and you want to educate them.
Correct.
You want to educate people in regards to that.
Correct.
But like I said, I understand because, some of the customers are like, man, we just really want to live in this area.
Yeah.
We just really love this unit, the way they structure it. Still go speak to someone, property agent, a financial advisor, planner, whatever it may be. Get that advice before signing off, because that salesman in the shopping center,
he doesn't know you.
He doesn't know you from a bar of soap,
and he doesn't care.
He's doing his job.
Yeah.
But do your job by yourself for yourself, and get that education before you sign off anything.
And like you said, your job is to help save people money, and our job is to help make people money.
Exactly.
And I can tell you, off the plan properties don't save you money, and they won't make you money either. So it's just a big loss. And look, people do want to live in certain areas, and they want the new designs, and they want this and that. Come speak to us, because we can find you those options without you getting stuck in these off the plan and these bad contracts,
Yeah.
because we can find you brand new properties without the downside of this stuff.
Yeah.
So
And it's not only that, if you're willing to wait 3 years
yeah, I mean,
for an apartment, go get that conversation going with a property agent.
yeah, we'll find you a lot of
If
stuff.
you want to wait the 3 years, he might even find you something, or she might even find you something within the 3 years for what you're looking for in that same area. So
Correct.
I'd say if you're gonna put money down on an asset you can see, on something like you said. What's the key word?
What was the keyword?
Scarcity.
Oh, scarcity.
Scarcity.
Yes,
The key word, just
I've gone blank.
you
There
put
was
your
a lot of
money on
keywords.
something that you can see, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
Because at least if you'll put your back against the wall,
Yeah.
you've got something to sell. You've got something to fall back on.
Yeah.
At the moment, if these guys wanted to pull out within the 3 years, they couldn't.
Yeah, you can't. Pretty much. Did you have any other points? Those are my 9 points. Did you have any other extra points?
No,
that
I
you
think we
wanted-
covered it through the
This is
9,
good,
yeah.
Yep. Well, thanks to everyone for listening. Hopefully this episode has shed some light into the off the plan world, and the potential pitfalls that you may face. And hopefully we saved one person from making a huge mistake. Fadi, before we sign off, do you want to just let everyone know again your company and where they can get you, how they can find you?
Anything got to do with lending, whether it be home, investment, business, commercial, car, equipment, look us up on all social media, Power Loans, and our website, www.powerloans.com.au. And again, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thanks for being on. We mentioned this last week. We are working on something that's coming out soon. Stay tuned. Might be out next week. You can find all of our content on our socials: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok. Just search First Brick Property and we will be there. If you have any topics you'd like to discuss, send us a message at our email, hello@firstbrick.com.au, nice and easy, or shoot us a message on our socials. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love a review. We'd love it. It really helps us get up higher in the charts, and we're up to episode 18 now. We'd love some more reviews. It allows more people to find us, to listen, to learn. So give us your 5-star reviews. Pass the pod, tell one person. It's very easy. One person you think is going to enjoy our podcast, and let them know about it, and then keep that love spreading. If you're listening to this, thank you so much. And if you joined in on YouTube and you're watching the first recorded episode of the First Brick Property Podcast, let us know what you think, and we'll maybe keep
Do I
doing
look
it.
shiny?
I think you do look shiny.
I look very shiny.
It's hard to see. I'll have to edit it a bit later. Thanks guys for listening. Buying property is our passion. Helping you do it is our mission. So yeah.
That was a good one, man.